E54, thank you so much for being here today. First of all, what did you think of the verdict?
Well, I supported the verdict. I agree with it.
And was there anything in the evidence, in the testimony, that really came out at you?
I think the things that I focused on when I was doing my own deliberation was the non-emergency phone call. I did pick up on some things out of Rachel Jantel's testimony, the Trayvon Martin's phone records, or her phone records when they were talking.
Of course, Rachel Jantel is the friend that Trayvon Martin was talking to right before the shooting on the cell phone.
Correct. Yep. And the ear witness, I call them the ear witnesses, the ones that heard the noises, which way the noises were going. They helped me fill a gap. And then a couple of the eyewitnesses. And I think the one thing that stands out the most is the injuries to Mr. Zimmerman.
What did you think of neighbor John Good's testimony? Talked about MMA style, ground and pound.
Yeah, I mean, what I got from that was just the motions that he saw. Whether it was ground and pound or MMA, it wasn't relevant to me. It was just the motions and the fact that who he saw on top and who he thought was on the bottom. I think those were the more relevant features of his testimony to me.
Did you think Rachel Jantel was credible?
I think, well, I did have some, I did pick up some credible information from her, and so yeah, I do think she was credible.
And whose voice do you think was on the 911 call?
Personally, I can't tell you who it was, but from the witnesses' testimonies and from the injuries to George Zimmerman, I believe it to be it.
You believe that it was George Zimmerman's
Yes.
voice, and so you would have voted not guilty.
Correct.
What did you think of B37, the juror who spoke out? Did you see that interview?
I did, yeah. To be honest with you, I was surprised that anybody could come out that quickly and talk about this. I know that when I got done and was released and was asked about what I thought, I didn't even know where to start. I didn't even know what to say. So I was a little surprised that she came out as quickly as she did. I'm not surprised that it might have been that was her that came out, but I just think that was a little bit too soon.
And what's your reaction to all the protests, demonstrations, and talks of a civil rights complaint now?
I just don't understand the civil rights complaint. I didn't see the evidence there that in the courtroom that would make anybody believe there was a civil rights case for this. The protest, the people are going to be angry no matter what the verdict was, and there's nothing we can do about that. So I just hope that they're peaceful, and they just do it, as calmly, as quiet, and the best they can. And there's not destruction and not hatred and not a lot of anger towards the jurors.
I know from the news perspective, we talked about some of the key witnesses, whether it be John Good or Rachel Jantel. Who to you were the key witnesses?
Well, I think one key witness to me was George Zimmerman during the non-emergency call. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that was direct evidence of what he was doing and how he was communicating. I think that was a key to his mentality at the time. There was a lot of emphasis on whether he was showing ill will, spite, or hatred, and I didn't see that. There was no evidence to support that in that phone call.
So you didn't think he was profiling?
So I didn't think he was profiling. No, there's no evidence to support that. I think he characterized Trayvon Martin as a suspected, or as a suspicious character, suspicious person, and that was all.
And then what else was there?
Another key thing for me was the tying Rachel Jantel's testimony to when she was on the phone with Trayvon, and you can't say what she was saying when, except for when the phone disconnected and then she called back and she talked to him again. At that point, Trayvon said he had lost a man, and he was at where his father was staying. He was at that place. At the same time of that happening, George Zimmerman had only just gotten out of his car about 25, 30 seconds. So he was still up at the T. And Trayvon, according to Chantel's or Rachel's testimony, would have been down the other end of the buildings at that point. So somehow those two got back together up at the top of the T. And we don't know how that happened, but in all likelihood, in my mind, even if George Zimmerman had walked down to where Trayvon was, they both walked back up to the T. So that would have implied that Trayvon had followed George Zimmerman back up. If George Zimmerman didn't walk down there, then Trayvon walked back up to the T somehow. Because then the ear witnesses heard the noises up there. Most of the ear witnesses, I believe one of them said the noises went the other direction. But the majority of them had the noises coming from the top of the T down to the trunk where John Good saw him laying on the ground or Trayvon on top of George Zimmerman. And I believe that John Good said that it was Zimmerman. I believe that it was Zimmerman because he had the color of the jacket that he had. So I tying all those together and the injuries that George Zimmerman had, that's where I came to my conclusion that it was justifiable.
B37 criticized Zimmerman for not going back to his car. What do you have to say about that?
There's I was fine with that. I mean, he was. I think at the time he was trying to keep an observation and communicate to the police, and was not being confrontational. He had the right to be where he was, and I don't have. I don't think he had to go back to his car.
When Dr. Bao took the stand, the medical examiner, what was going through your mind?
I was trying to figure out what was going on with, a guy with his expertise. I understand I understand that they're not going to be able to remember their autopsies from 2 years ago or a year ago, every one of their autopsies that they do. I would think that he would have prepared himself better with the notes from his autopsy rather than spending time researching why people can't remember things, because that wasn't relevant. So I was confused about all that with him. That's probably what stands out in my mind with him.
Were there other witnesses that confused you just as much?
I should remember this. I'm just drawing a blank now.
How about that DNA? Going through all the DNA, was that tough to follow?
It was interesting. It was one of those things I was focused on. I was looking for the evidence. I'm looking for what's there. So no, it wasn't hard to follow that for me.
Was it tough to look at some of the pictures of Trayvon Martin's body, listening to those 911 calls of the screaming of whether it was him or Zimmerman?
For me, it wasn't. I was just focused on what I was hearing and what I was seeing, and not what it was, not who it was.
Did you ever look over at the families when all that was going on?
No.
Purposely?
Yes.
What was the importance of
that? Out of respect for them, it was hard enough for them to see it, I had no right to be looking at seeing how they were reacting.